Welcome to the Envelopes Emmy Contender Series. I'm Yvonne Villarreal, and today we're talking to Mandy Patinkin, who plays Saul Berenson from TV series Homeland. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for asking me.
I'm surprised by how much laughter we've already shared behind the scenes,
Yes.
but we won't get into it too much.
We could say a little bit. Had a little small discussion about creating a virtual something so that when actors get older, they can look younger. I thought it was a complete act of insanity, and we won't mention the names to protect the innocent.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, the couch here is quite wonderful. I just want people at home to know that this is there's a budget issue here at the times, and imagine my arm being up here, and we'll be fine.
It's all good.
You can edit anything you want.
We have 5 cameras.
We got 5 cameras, yeah.
We'll do our job.
Yeah, I'd like to look like Steve McQueen. Okay.
Well, I'm sure you're used to this by now. 7 seasons in, the way the show continues to very much mirror and reflect the current climate. It's kind of spooky and eerie. Talk a little bit about that. Is that when you feel like you're doing your job at its best, when it's able to do that?
No, not necessarily. I think initially we were much more a fiction-natured show, and then it slowly became and morphed into what I sometimes refer to as a Polaroid of the moment we're all living in. That is not my desire for the show. My desire, that I've campaigned with Alex on regularly, Alex, our showrunner, and the other writers, is that I feel our job is to create some poetic version of reality, not to be a reality show, not to be a Polaroid. And because we're a fictional state of mind, not the real world we're all living in, what can we offer in this poetic version? What can we offer as a possibility, an opportunity, another choice, a suggestion for individuals who actually watch this show that might be in a place of power? People do watch these shows and get ideas. It's a bedtime story to some globally. And so this year I was more than happy than I'd ever been because Alex came out with a particular piece of writing that an actor handled beautifully in the final episode of season 7 that made my wishes come true and offered. It was an offering of a possibility to heal a broken world. And that's when I think we're at our absolute best.
Well, we've heard a lot about spy camp. Is this something that you partake in?
Yes. So to clarify what spy camp is, it's just a nickname we give it. We go to Washington, D.C. the past several years for 3 days. 3 days. Might be a little more sometime, but 3. And we're there meeting individuals, the individuals who are the heads of intelligence agencies, heads of think tanks, Pulitzer Prize winning writers who cover all of the above. And we sit and have 2 to 3 hour meetings with these individuals for 3 days in a row, 12 hours a day, lunches and dinners included. It is profound. It is overwhelming. I remember a couple of years ago, Claire and I were walking back to the hotel and kind of looking at each other in a stunned fashion going, that was a little more than we needed to know. Yeah. But the access we have to the intelligence community and the operatives around it is extraordinary. The help they give us on an ongoing basis is unbelievable. Even the work I do with the refugee community, I have access to people to essentially give me a PhD in the vetting process of our country for immigrants, which is of the highest standard of anywhere in the world. It's considered the gold standard. And I just want to throw in, while I brought that up for a second, that's one of the great, because of that education, I became very clear that that's one of the great errors that take place in this post-truth world, where politicians in particular tell you who you need to be afraid of. And with refugees, for example, the vetting process is extraordinary. There are 9 places around the world that the UN has where a refugee, an individual or family has to go to be vetted first before they can even enter into the 2-year process, and that process never ends. So by the time they come to the United States, refugees are the safest people in this country. And a fact is, and I'm not up for, spewing a bunch of numbers, but not a single terrorist incident has taken place by a refugee since 1970. So they are the safest people in this country. I have this information because of the education that's available to me, both through the International Rescue Committee and the intelligence community.
Did your work with refugees sort of take shape because of your work on Homeland?
Without a doubt. It began in season 5. We were shooting in Berlin. The initial story of, I think, the first episode was a Syrian refugee camp. At the very moment, 125,000 refugees were trying to make it across the Balkan route, fleeing the conflict and looking for sanctuary in Germany or Switzerland or other places or get to the United States. In March 2016, they slammed the doors shut. So the success of this show, so I wanted to initially go there as soon as we finished filming, which wasn't until 6+ months later, to hold their hand. They reminded me of my family, my ancestors, my Grandpa Max, my Grandma Celia, my wife's Grandma Masha. And I wanted to, it was a time when our country was about welcoming, not building walls, but building welcome. None of us would be here, none of us talking here in this studio, none of us listening at home or wherever you are getting this on your phones or machines. We wouldn't be here without the welcoming nature of our ancestry. And I wouldn't have the opportunity to talk and learn and meet these beautiful people that are just like our families and our children, who are the safest people in our country, were it not for the platform that the success of Homeland has afforded me. And if you told me years ago that I would be able to be an actor in a television series, and because of that, I might be able to be help those who are the most vulnerable among us all over the world have a voice, I would have said, what are you talking about? And it's been one of the, it is without a doubt the greatest gift of this entire 7 years.
That's profound.
Profound. And I also, I like to take every opportunity that I have to suggest to people that if you are not, I just got back from Uganda after we finish every year. For the past 3 years, I go with the International Rescue Committee somewhere in the world where there's a refugee crisis. As soon as we finished filming in Budapest, which doubled for, well, I don't want to say for those who haven't seen the show yet, for someplace, I got on a plane and went to Uganda. And the story there is so different. It's all about welcome, not walls, and how they take care of people and how they take care of their fellow human being and their moral, ethical teaching that they share with all of us. And I want to say to people that you don't need to have an interview, newspaper talk show, or be on a television show or rich and famous. You have the most power in the world. You have what's called a vote. And if you are not happy with the moral, ethical nature of your representation at home, in your city, your country, or abroad, find people who know people that match your moral, ethical nature and find a way to get them elected. Make a donation, knock on doors, participate. And if you don't participate, don't complain down the road.
Well, I mean, this show has, we're used to it sort of being this globe-trotting show that goes to other countries to look at the threats, but the writers this season really looked homeward to look at information warfare and Russian interference, but also, the sort of unhappiness that Americans felt toward the U.S. government. Did you find it illuminating in that way to look at, what some people are feeling about the government and politics right now?
Well, I don't think it's a surprise to any of us who wake up in the morning, even if you don't read the newspaper, you have to be literally brain dead to not be aware of the different attitudes that people have all over our country, let alone the world at large. So that was no surprise to me. Our ability to dramatize or highlight, emphasize in dramatic form some of these conditions, differences of opinion, global differences of opinion, manipulation of truth, a post-truth world, is an extraordinary opportunity to have in a television show that, as Shakespeare said, for us is to mirror nature. And the nature that we're all living with right now is questionably profoundly fragile, where human lives are at risk at home and abroad. It's not a joke, and it's not an entertainment. And so how do you do a television show that is an entertainment, that also is a bedtime story for people globally, and to also touch the nerve of the lives we're living at this moment and possibly suggest something to hopefully begin a process to heal a broken world? That's in the hands of our gifted writers, Alex Gonza and the rest of our team. And And it has been, for that reason, one of the most profound experiences I've had in my professional career. To be able to absorb the real world through the access we have, and then through dramatic form to somehow tell stories that are a little past, or I hope even a great distance past, the water cooler conversation.
Well, when we pick up in season 7, Saul is in jail.
Yeah.
He's one of the 200 detainees, sort of what they think is responsible for the attack on. What was that like, though, to sort of start out this season not really in a position of power, to be in that state?
I'm Mandy Patinkin, and I am not in a position of power, and I am always in that state, whether it's at home with my children, my friends, my family, or the world at large. So it was no
It was no
leap,
stretch for you.
no stretch for me. It was like, show up. Okay?
Were you just trying to enjoy that moment of calm before the storm?
I'm grateful I've never been in prison. I don't know if I'd define it as calm.
Yeah.
I thought that's what you call, drama. When you take a guy from prison and you make him the head of national security. Okay. That's not my job. My job is to somehow make you buy that so you'll tune in for the next 11 hours. But it worked. So.
What did you think of that development for him to become that national security advisor to the president?
Oh, that's fine. I honestly, I don't pay attention to the label of the job or wherever Saul goes, or how he bounces around because of what he does well or where he makes mistakes, so his positions change. That's of the least interest to me. Of the greatest interest to me is how he listens. How he listens to those around him, what's in between the lines. And that's not to say anything disparaging about the lines. Arthur Miller said in a beautiful documentary that his daughter made, Rebecca, he said that at the height of his playwright career, that he felt his privilege was to be able to write things that echoed the world we're living in at that moment, and to offer the audience the opportunity to listen between his words, to put their own lives in that place. And so, I forgot the question.
Saul as national.
I just like talking about Arthur Miller. I like to get that in. I did.
No,
I don't know where we were.
Saul as national security advisor.
Yeah.
And I just remember when the sort of development happened on social media, a lot of people saying, I wish Saul was the national security advisor right now.
Yeah, I was waiting for a call from the administration. No one called. Got some calls from the studio, the network, but not the administration. Maybe they didn't have my number.
How do you think Saul would fare in the current administration?
If the writers were in charge of the administration, very well.
Very well.
Yeah, if I was in charge, I wouldn't take the job.
Good to know.
It's a no.
It's a no.
Yeah.
How would you say the relationship between Saul and Carrie has developed since season 1? How would you describe the dynamic and where they find themselves in season 7?
Good question. I think it's no different than the relationship I have with my sons Isaac and Gideon, who are of similar ages. It began with, mentor, parental, who's the parent, who's the teacher, who's the student, who's the parent, who's the child, who's the student, who's the teacher. And that continually shifts. So from day one, Saul always believed, when he met this gifted human being who's kind of a superhero of humanity, of saving humanity, he believes, that she was his legacy. When he goes, he believes in her nature to make the world a better place. That has only expanded. And then on a personal level, which I know infuses itself into the work itself, the grace for which I get the privilege of watching Claire as a human being, an actress, proceed and work, has been monumental for me. A few years ago, we were doing a scene that I often make reference to, where it was a denouement scene of the episode, and the camera was moving in very close and slow onto her face, and it was to tell, a great moment. And she was utterly brilliant. And a car drove by in the background through the windows, and somebody's cell phone went off, and it ruined the take. And a normal human being might get a little upset.
Yes.
And she just, in a very quiet voice, said, if everyone can just check their phones and make sure the background's closed off, and let's do it again. She knew that take wasn't going to be usable, probably. And she did it again, and did it wonderfully. Whether nothing's the same, each time, but it was certainly good enough. But the grace she had at that moment was something that inspired me, and I wish I had met her when I was a young Mandy and had learned that much earlier in my life. But you learn it when you learn it, and I'm so grateful that she's been my partner in this.
She's fabulous.
Beyond words.
How about, there's a moment in season 7 where they're meeting up and she's trying to talk to him about a situation with Dante and the Simone stuff and
the long walk in the park.
The long walk in the park.
Yeah.
It's like a little girl who has her daddy wrapped around her finger.
Yeah.
The way she's able to get him to tell her things.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, no different than my own kids. She knows me like a book. She knows that my job insists that I don't share that information with her, and she knows how to break that rule. And she knows how to wrap me around her little finger, just as you so eloquently said. She controls my nature, but I allow it because I've learned both through being with the actress, the character, and the storyline for 7 years that it will be for all for the good, the greater good of the fictional tale we're telling, to hopefully leave something behind for the viewer who reads our video book of 12 hours every season, of which we've made 7 editions of this novel, and hopefully get to leave with something that might leave them hopeful and optimistic about the broken world of the nonfiction world we're all living in. And this season, I got that wish more than ever. I've often talked to Alex about trying to leave something at the end that offers a feeling of hope and optimism that is a poetic. Have I already said this in the interview?
Yeah.
I did. Okay, so I won't.
No, but if you want to share, I mean, the episode has aired.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about specifically what that scene was?
Well, I don't. I'll say what it was, but I leave it to you because you know how some people haven't watched it. But in the final episode, Alex created a speech for the president that Elizabeth Marvel delivered, and Elizabeth and Alex worked together at one point on that speech to hone it in a very particular way that was very important. And when I read that first speech that when I read the first draft of it, I was just ecstatic because I had been campaigning for this kind of moment in our piece, offering, wish for all of us to think about. And I got it. And I'm quite certain there will be something equal or greater at the end of the 8th season. And that's a pretty rewarding, you can't ask for more than that.
Well, I mean, talk about that. I mean, do you feel like the nation, this nation, not the one in Homeland, has enough of that hope right now? And what will it take to get there?
I do not feel that this nation has enough hope like that right now. And I think it is up to the art community as a system of possibility and offering to do their job more than they've ever done it before. And that includes the music that we make, the paintings that we make, the architecture we create, the food we offer, everything to have a kind of love about it, an inclusiveness about our fellow man, as opposed to what Heather McGhee said the other day at a Demos event, which was we're living in a loveless state of mind. And that's a frightening comment to make. And lovelessness and fear and lack of truth and mistrust. And I say to people, and I don't care whether I've repeated it, and forgive me when I ask if I've repeated because I do different interviews,
Yeah,
and
no,
I can't keep track of what I
totally.
said. But I say to people over and over again, if your moral, ethical nature is not being matched by how refugees are being treated, or Black Lives Matter are being treated, or Native Americans, or LGBTQ, or any aspect of humanity in your own town, city, country, or world, if you are not satisfied with your moral, ethical nature of your representative, then find someone who matches it and work to get them elected and work to make change. And that's your job as a citizen who has more power than the richest people in the world, and it's called voting. And I encourage everyone to really take that seriously.
June 5th, tomorrow for us. How about, well, talking on that, the sort of O'Keefe aspect to the season, the talking about fake news and social media and misinformation, what are your thoughts on it, and how do you view social media? I know you're on it.
Yeah. My children, because of the refugee crisis, my relationship with the International Rescue Committee, my children both said to me, Dad, if there's a cause that you're interested in talking about and bringing attention to, you got to get with social media. And I said, I don't know how to do it. They said, then find out. And the people at IRC help me with it, and I have someone else who helps me. And we use it to share stories of voices that have no platform. And so I think it's an extraordinary privilege and power of communication for the good. I am learning more and more about it, and we're trying to use it in the best way we can to bring information to people's attention, to move them to participate, to take care of those who have no home, power, voice. And countries like Uganda and other countries around the world that are developing nations taking the brunt and have no finances. And so I think social media, I think social media is, when used properly, is a profound tool, and we've also seen it can wreak havoc. That is part of what our series this season has been about. Clint Watts, the real person, the real Clint in the real world, who we've met through Spy Camp, just has a new book that came out about it all. He tracks it all over the world, this communication. People who mean harm to other people all over the world. And there's a way to follow it. There's a way to interfere with it. The world of tomorrow will have controls to some degree and still maintain free speech, I'm sure. But the way I look at it, the problem aspects are, once you've invented the nuclear bomb, it's never going to go away. So what do? You have to, once you've injured your leg, the scar and the injury will be there. And so it's the tissue that heals around it. And how you strengthen that tissue that allows you to walk, sometimes without a limp. But the injury is never gone, and the fragile point will always be in existence. And so it is up to us and to our children and the children to come to maintain moral, ethical behavior in all aspects of existence, in how we deal with weapons, and how we deal with information, and how we deal with each other, and how we deal with truth, and how we deal with the privilege of being alive, and not thinking that your life is any more important than your neighbor's. And I'm talking to everyone on every side of the coin. My brothers and sisters who vote differently from me, I want to hear what they have to say. I am interested in what they have to say, and I'm not interested in converting them to vote or behave or think the way I think. I believe at the end of the day, if people activate themselves and present themselves and wake up that the right thing will happen for humanity globally, but not if you stay home and not if you don't use your voice and that privilege of your vote. Nothing will happen if you do not exercise your privilege of existing and living in a country where you have a vote.
I don't even know where to go from there because that was like, an important thing to say. And I don't want to follow it up with a frivolous question, but we're going to take some questions from social media.
I'm in show business, girl. Go right ahead. Frivolous me.
Well, this won't be too frivolous. Bob on Facebook asked, do you have any plans to return to Broadway, even for a short stay during the Homeland hiatus?
Are these coming right now while we're
Yeah.
talking? Oh, so this is live.
Uh-huh.
Okay, say what he said again. Hi, Bob, wherever you are.
Do you have any plans to return to Broadway, even for a short stay during Homeland's hiatus?
During Homeland's hiatus, I always have a plan to return to the theater anywhere that I find a good play or a good piece to do with people that I want to be with. It is that door is always open, and if Bob has a play, send it over.
Bob, get on it.
Yeah, LA Times, whatever the zip code is. Attention, Mandy.
Marnie on Twitter asked, what has been your favorite scene on the series that you have not been involved in?
Elizabeth Keene's speech in episode 12 of season 7.
That was easily answered then.
No, it's a no-brainer.
Well, when Claire was here last week, we were talking about how this is the longest job that she has had. And I think the same is true for you.
Except for my concert career.
Oh, okay.
The singing, I have sung some of the same songs for
Right.
over 30 years.
Uh-huh.
And so that's the longest job. But in terms of any other thing other than singing in the concert career, I'm right with Claire. Longest one ever.
How does that feel?
Pretty great. Great because of the content of the material, the nature of our stories, the quality of our writing staff, the actors that we have the privilege of being with, and our extraordinary crew who are there for every shot, every day, every year. No one works harder than them. And it's and when you're not in something that you're appreciating, it takes forever. And when you are, I can't believe that 7 years are gone and that 1 year, that 8th year is coming, and how quickly that will be over. And it's overwhelming how fast time moves for all of us.
Yeah. Well, it's not confirmed yet, but season 8 is talked about being the final season. That's what you guys are on contract through, I believe. So if it is the final season, how are you feeling on that? Because it seems like the show is needed now more than ever, but maybe do you feel like it is time to hang it up?
Well, I think there'll always be a need to have stories that are reflecting the condition of the world we are living in. This certainly is doing that. It's one of the stories that is doing that. I have been told in no uncertain terms by the studio and the network that no decisions have been made. And to make that clear, I have also been told by other individuals that they think that their time's up. And it is a fact that Alex Gonza, the showrunner, and Claire and myself are contracted only through season 8. But I have no idea what the future holds. I do not need to think about it right now. I just need to think about having a nice chat with you, and that's it.
Do you just want peace for Saul?
I want Saul to have his dream come true, which is a world where people stop othering individuals, where hatred and bigotry take a rest and a vacation from existence, where healing can begin all over the world. And I would love it if it took place in Israel, between the Israelis and the Palestinians, as a story of some nature, because I think it is the epicenter of the world we live in. And if we can create a dramatic version of some peace, possibility, option that is realistic, that actually might happen or could happen in real life, that even might be mirrored to the real world before we say goodnight, Gracie, I think that would be my final wish for our show called Homeland.
Well, final question before we get to the lightning round. what is your most favorite to play? Saul when he's silent and just emoting, or when he's has the angry suspicions?
When he's silent and listening. He has taught me to be a better person. What the writers and the editors have manipulated into my performance by their work in writing and editing have given me the gift of teaching Mandy how to speak less and listen more. And not evident in this interview, but trust me, it does osmosize itself in important areas of my life with my family and other areas. When I get to just be with the refugees and listen to their stories and share them. That's all I can promise them, is to share their stories with the world. And I just want to take a moment to encourage anyone listening to go to our social media that my sons encouraged me to do. And the Facebook is called Mandy Patinkin with the blue circle and the X. Instagram is Mandy Patinkin with the blue circle and the X. And somebody stole my Twitter name, so it's Patinkin Mandy with the blue circle and the X. And there's a lot of information about and interviews that we've done with some extraordinary human beings about the refugee crisis.
Well, thank you. We're going to get to our lightning round.
Okay, I don't know what that is, but I'll find out.
I was going to say, last show you binge watched.
Binge watched. Last show I've binged watched nothing.
Oh, I'm impressed. If you could go back and be on any TV show ever,
yes,
what would it be?
It won't be just one. I'd want to be in Three Stooges. I'd want to be with the Three Stooges. I'd want to be in one of the Superman episodes that George Reeves did on television, and I'd like to be in a Honeymooners episode.
Ooh, Honeymooners, so good. A lot of people watch TV to unwind. What do you do to unwind?
I take walks outside in the park on the Hudson River in Central Park, and I learn songs. I learn music, and I sing them quietly so that people think I'm crazy.
What do you know now that you wish you knew on your first acting job?
What I know now that I wish I knew on my first acting job is Shakespeare's advice, to thine own self be true. And the advice I try to give young actors is, you go to an audition or something, you're not being auditioned. Audition them. Even if they don't say anything or if the room is dark, see if there's any kindness in the room. Is it a room you might want to stay in or go back to? A room you might want to go back to another time. If somebody says something to you as a person that has interest, just like meeting somebody you want to have dinner with again. You're in charge. No one's in charge of you. You're in charge. And you have no idea what the future holds. And I love what Bob Fosse said to me years ago. He said, just if you can, if there's not a problem, take the job. Because that's energy that will happen with you and the job and the people you're with, and that energy breeds energy. And that's Einstein.
Well, that's a perfect way to end the chat. Thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
For all of you, if you want to check out more of our Emmy chats, head over to latimes.com.